everybody. Welcome to this edition of Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck with Mary Evers, and we have quite the show to talk about here as we will be talking about the Boston Red Sox in just a little bit. So sit back, prepare for that one. That's going to be a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But we do start off with the coronavirus and its effect on sports. And the reason we're bringing this up is because two Major League Baseball teams have basically missed a week of their season because of an outbreak.
Yeah.
We're going to start off with the Miami Marlins and that disaster. And I'll talk about the timeline in a little bit, Mary, but just your initial reaction to the Marlins outbreak. We'll get to the Cardinals in a little bit.
When I saw the circumstances around that, especially considering they knew someone had tested positive and they played the game anyways, I don't understand what their logic of thinking was. I don't know if this is just like, for some reason over the state of Florida, there's just this bubble that makes you not believe in this virus because everything's going wrong down there seemingly. But I mean, how can you be dumb? And the fact that Derek Jeter came out and was like, they just wanted some milk for their coffee. There's no milk in their hotel rooms, or there's no room service for these guys. That's not a good excuse. It's not. Nothing they did was smart, and they handled it the exact opposite way that they should have.
Listen, the Hilton Rewards only goes so far. Sometimes you gotta get milk for your coffee.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Marlins timeline here. You mentioned one of the players testing positive.
Mm-hmm.
The initial player was Jorge Alfaro. He tested positive on July 24th, also known as opening day. He did miss that start. Three more players tested positive on July 26th. This is really when the plot starts to thicken because players learned of those positive tests, but they still decided to play the game. Why you play the game during a pandemic, who knows? But let's keep going here because 11 more positive tests from Marlins players were announced on July 27th, prompting the postponement of the Marlins home opening series against the Baltimore Orioles. Now we're going to start to really show you the effects of contact tracing here, more or less, because the Phillies played the Marlins. The Phillies were quarantined, and their series against the Yankees was postponed. By July 31st, there were 20 positive tests, 18 players, and 2 staff members. It got so bad that the Marlins players actually that contracted the virus, close to the 20 players, they had to take a sleeping bus from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, back to Miami, Florida, so they didn't intermingle with any of the actual players that were kind of smart and stayed in their own hotel room.
Yeah.
So you had that going on. Now, there was one member of the Phillies coaching staff that tested positive and a clubhouse staff member that tested positive, but luckily no players from the Phillies tested positive there. I understand the Miami Marlins have a young roster, but Derek Jeter has to talk to these players.
Yeah.
Don Mattingly, the manager of the Marlins, has to talk to these players. These are all players who are 20 to 27, 28 years old. There's a few exceptions in there. But what are we seeing in the world right now? We're seeing, a bunch of young people going out into the world without masks, without social distancing, having parties, drinking parties, COVID parties. And you also have the younger people in that age group that are now starting to become the most susceptible to getting this virus.
Right.
This is a very scary situation. If you're facing an older team like Philadelphia, like the Red Sox, teams that have players that have families, guess what? You want to talk about contract tracing? The Miami Marlins went from Miami up to Atlanta. They apparently went to a club, who knows there.
Mm-hmm.
Then they went to the Phillies. The Phillies were supposed to play the Yankees. Now that whole schedule is thrown off. Pretty much the Miami Marlins tried to do their best to destroy the 2020 baseball season.
Yeah. And the players were obviously at fault for going out and contracting the virus in the first place. But a lot has to be said about their management and their front office for letting them play these games even though they tested positive. If no one is paying attention, no one. That entire organization should be shut down. Like if baseball did regulation like soccer does, they'd be gone. They should not play this year. They really shouldn't. And it's gonna suck for the teams that we're gonna get the easy W's by playing them this year. But they gotta go. They really do.
Oddly enough, the Marlins had the best record winning percentage-wise. Granted, they missed a week. But I do want to bring up Derek Jeter's comments. You alluded to them earlier. This is what he said in a statement. We did have a couple of individuals leave the hotel. We had guys leave to get coffee, to get clothes. A guy left to have dinner at a teammate's house. There were no other guests on site. There was no salacious activities. There was no hanging out at bars, no clubs, no running around Atlanta. They were getting together in groups. They weren't wearing masks as much as they should have. They weren't social distancing. Guess what? As the owner, these players are your responsibility.
Yeah.
Get on these players. It's ridiculous. You're in one of the biggest hotspots in the world right now. The fact that you didn't talk to these players, and this is stuff that I would understand if this happened late in August, early in September,
Right.
but this happened 2 days into the
Yeah.
regular season for Major League Baseball.
Yeah. They exercise no thought process at all in this situation. And I don't understand it. Like it's completely baffling to me that they thought all of this was a good idea. And then they thought it was a good idea to keep playing. Because now there are people that you're not, it's like, I mean, we always keep saying this, like, even if you don't care about getting it yourself, protect another person. Like, what is the thought process? Like, they could have easily, when they went home, brought this home to their kids and their wives or their elderly parents. Like, they're not thinking at all. And they think that this is all a big joke. And I don't understand that after what has it been? 5 months of this, that they don't understand it now. What's it going to take until like someone like something they actually know dies of this to get through their heads? Like, it's so frustrating.
Well, look at the Red Sox and Erod. We'll get to him in just a little bit. But I do want to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, as they have had their own outbreak. 13 players have tested positive for COVID-19, including Yadier Molina. Molina said this on his positive test: "I am saddened to have tested positive for COVID-19, even after adhering to safety guidelines that were put in place." Now, there were rumors, much like the Marlins going to a club, that the Cardinals went to a bar or a casino, but nonetheless, they were in a place they shouldn't be.
Right.
Another example here of players just not taking this seriously. And we put a poll out on Twitter at Oob New England. I think is our Twitter handle. I'll check on that in just a little bit. I should probably know that.
It is, yeah.
But a bulk of the poll said that they don't think players are taking this seriously. And I put it as a whole because you have the NBA and NHL players that are taking this seriously. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I think MLB players are treating this as an absolute joke.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the reason why they are treating it as a joke is because they're not in a bubble like the other sports are. I think to them, they're thinking of this as a normal season when they shouldn't be. But I'm sure there are definitely people in the MLB that I'm sure are taking this seriously. But when it's this many people and entire teams, it's so dangerous. And it speaks so poorly on the sport after it was so hard for the Players Association and the MLB to come up with a return to play plan in the first place. And then it was, tell us when and where and we'll be there. And they were there, but they don't care about the situation. It just proves to you that player health must not have actually been the issue that the Players Association was worried about, because right, exactly, it's money. I think that a lot of people are saying now that because the MLB is failing, not being in a bubble, the NFL is probably going to fail it as well. But from what it looks like to me, the NFL seems that the outward image that the NFL Players Association is showing right now is one that cares more about the safety and the health of their players than the MLB Players Association ever did.
Unfortunately, the only way Major League Baseball is going to grasp the levity of the situation is if the Yankees have an outbreak, the Dodgers have an outbreak, the Red Sox have an outbreak. Because right now, if you told me that the Miami Marlins had to cancel their season, would it really mean a lot in the end?
No.
Probably not. And you could say the same thing even for the Philadelphia Phillies, because they don't get the big attention like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Astros. Right. Same thing with the Cardinals. But Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred did tell ESPN that the league is not intending to shut down, saying we are playing. The players need to be better, but I am not a quitter in general, and there is no reason to quit now. We have to be fluid, but it is manageable. And we're filming this right now on August 6th. The reason I point out the date is because it seems like day by day we're teetering on either side of this cliff here.
100%.
And one more outbreak, this thing's going to end up in the dumpster for 2020.
I mean, last weekend with the the Red Sox and the Yankees playing each other, had any positive cases come out of that matchup, this league would have been done. The season would have been over in 5 seconds. But because it's these, like you said, these franchises that aren't as hugely popular as the Red Sox, Yankees, the Dodgers, no one's going to care.
So that is one league that we don't think is taking the COVID situation seriously.
Yeah.
There are two that actually do have a fairly good grasp on this. Inside the NHL and NBA bubbles, there have been no positive tests in quite a while among players. Is a bubble concept something that we could be looking into the future for, because we don't know when this pandemic is going to be over. In all likelihood, next season there's going to be no fans, and more likely than not for hockey and basketball, you're probably looking at bubble 2.0.
Yeah, going into this, I would have assumed that next season they would just play with no fans in their home stadiums. But after seeing what the MLB is doing, and I think the other players associations and the other leagues are monitoring that very carefully, I would assume that they try to do bubbles again. The problem with that is now if we do whole seasons in the bubble, there's even more teams to be putting in the bubble. And I don't know if guys are going to want to be away from their families again in another bubble situation. So I think that it's going to be kind of tough to convince the players to go back into the bubble. But like you said, I think it might be the only option at this point if they want to play again.
Yeah, the only way you can really pull this off, and I'm thinking of this from a basketball standpoint because I'm a basketball fan, is you have the Eastern Conference and Western Conference bubbles start off in a neutral site, a Disney World, Disneyland, start off in those things, and you kind of do what you did for the restart for the NBA here. You have all 30 teams split up into 15 or split up into two bubbles, and then you play a few games there. You split off into divisional bubbles, and you try and play out the rest of the year there. Unfortunately, there's just so much money at stake here that the NBA and NHL can't afford to lose next season or even a bulk of next season. And I mean, financially here, we know what's going on with NBC Sports Boston. A lot of their money comes from the sports they cover, and they've already laid off 20 people. So this could be a very dark time for NBA and NHL if they have to figure out how to do this all over again in December.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. I can promise you that. I think that the NHL and the NBA will both finish their playoffs for this season, and I don't foresee them starting to play again in December. I really don't. As well as both the leagues have done with the situation as it is to finish this season. I think it was kind of a special case because they were both so close to the playoffs anyways. So I don't see them being able to start a whole new season with all the teams for both leagues in one place. It just doesn't seem realistic.
All right, so let's talk about the NBA bubble for just a moment here, as it has been holding up fairly well. We talked about consecutive weeks without a positive test for a player.
Yeah.
So Lou Williams did make some extra stops on an excused absence. He did have a funeral to go to for a family friend, but then he decided to continue getting over his loss at a Atlanta strip club. Really after that, though, there weren't any players that were leaving the bubble, cheating the system. Dwight Howard did have the snitch hotline called on him a couple times. But can the NBA's streak of good luck here as far as positive COVID tests continue into the playoffs?
I think so, especially because, like, Lou Williams aside, it seems like everyone else is taking this very seriously. And honestly, I think that they might be having more fun in the NBA bubble than any of us outside of the bubble are having. They have so much to do. They're playing, they're playing basketball, they're swimming, they're playing volleyball, they're going fishing. Like, I want to be in the bubble because it looks like there's more to do there than I get to do just quarantining in my house. So I'm like a little bit jealous of the NBA players right now. So I think because they've created this atmosphere for the NBA that they're not getting bored. And I'm sure it stinks that they don't have their families, but once the playoff starts, I think that their families are going to come in. So that's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be a little tricky when the families can come in the bubble because you're going to have to test all the families now to let them in. And that's going to be a little bit of a tricky situation, but I feel like the NBA probably has the most chance of getting over that bump, because it does seem like everyone's taking it seriously. And if these players are taking it seriously, we can all assume that their families are taking it seriously as well.
So just to add on to what you were talking about, the bubble and the families coming in, that's going to start around August 30th, which should put the league around the conference semifinals. And at that point, then you're only talking about 8 teams there all together.
Right.
Now, some of the guidelines that were issued is the guests and family members must quarantine for 7 days before actually traveling to the bubble. They must submit a clearance form signed by a physician saying that they have no risk factors of getting the virus. But if they get the virus, they won't be in a life-threatening situation.
Right.
They must undergo testing when they arrive to Disney World. And then once cleared of quarantine, a week after their stay in Disney, basically they'll be treated just like the players, regular testing. They'll have to wear armbands, temperature checks, face masks, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk quickly here about the image of the NBA and NHL bubble compared to the MLB restart. As if you watch NHL playoffs, the NBA restart, it looks like a video game, or it looks like
it does.
Sports event in the future. You can't really tell the difference. But then you look at Major League Baseball, you have cardboard cutouts, and it looks like a post-apocalyptic sporting event taking place.
Yeah, I think that they both look like video games to me, because the MLB looks like a video game, like the MLB video games from the late 90s, where it's like there's people in the stands, but they look just like flat people, which is basically what it is, because they're cardboard cutouts. I guess I don't mind either way if they're cardboard cutouts, but I'm getting so distracted by empty seats. I really am with the MLB. So I'm glad that the NBA and the NHL kind of removed that factor. Because obviously not having fans there stinks. But I have to say, I think I like basketball out of all 3 sports more watching it, because I love you can hear them running up and down the court, and I like that you can hear the ball dribbling, and every time a ball hits the backboard or the hoop, it sounds good, because there's so many like audio things to amplify for basketball. I feel like it's a better product so far. I'm really missing crowd noise in hockey. And I think the players are too, because the Bruins obviously are not doing well at this point. But I don't think no team that I've watched has a sense of urgency that most hockey players usually play with. And I think that has a lot to do with the lack of crowd noise. So I hope that all these teams can get over that, so that the playoffs are at least a little bit more interesting than these round robin games and the play-in tournament has been going. But I think the blocking off the seats has been good for the NBA and the NHL, and I think the NBA is doing a really good job of making this a really watchable product.
The cool thing about NBA is if you were a season ticket holder or you had tickets to one of the games that got canceled because of the stoppage of play, you actually got a special pass that you could go on to this Michelob courtside thing, and you're right there in the crowd. And it was kind of cool for the Celtics Trailblazers game. They had Paul Pierce, and sitting next to Paul Pierce in the virtual seating with Jason Tatum's son, Deuce. So that was kind of cool to watch, and one of the cool aspects of the NBA. And I think it kind of helps players' psyche a little bit to know that there's family, even if it's just on the other side of the screen.
Right. And honestly, it makes for a funner to watch product. Sorry. Like, I think last night, the Lakers game, Lil Wayne was one of the fans that was on the virtual seats. And then I don't know who the woman was next to him, but he put his hand up, and she must have been watching closely to the broadcast, because she put her hand up so it looked like they were high-fiving. So I think like having fun with all of this is the best way to go about it. Like, ignoring the fact that there are no fans would have been a bad idea. So the way that they're handling this has been pretty awesome.
All right, so that's a generic look at the pandemic. Let's look at a baseball team that is making everybody sick for other reasons here, and that is your Boston Red Sox. As of August 6th, they are 4-8. Mm-hmm. They have a better winning percentage than some teams, so just brace for a long list of teams here. They have a better winning percentage than Kansas City, Texas, Pittsburgh. They have the 4th worst winning percentage in Major League Baseball. They are 2-6 in games not started by Nathan Eovaldi. Their best hitter by average with a reasonable number of at-bats is Kevin Pillar, 342 average, 38 at-bats. And Xander Bogaerts has sat out twice in this young season. So this is your baseball team. So what do you make of this bad start?
It's so bad. And we all knew going into this that the pitching was going to be a problem, but everyone was like, "Yeah, but our bats are great. Offense is going to be fantastic. We'll just score 10 runs every game and we'll be fine." That is not what happened. It happened opening night against the Orioles, and then it hasn't happened since. Like it's so disheartening that it's Pilar and Verdugo have been like carrying this team offensively for the most part. And it's like these two guys that we've never seen before. We've played against them, but they're new to the Red Sox, and they seem to be the ones that care. Them and Christian Vasquez. Christian Vasquez is doing as much work as he possibly can for this team, but that's it. I mean, obviously Bogarts has a couple home runs and has been hitting relatively okay, but Benintendi, Devers, Martinez, our designated hitter, not doing well at all. It's very depressing. And Jackie Bradley Jr. started out okay, but in Jackie Bradley Jr. fashion, his bat has gotten cold very quickly.
Listen, Jackie Bradley Jr. is just on par for a typical season, so some things never change.
I would love to get rid of Jackie Bradley Jr. I really would.
To me, part of the problem is the fact that this is such a short season, and the Red Sox are coming off of basically a monumental trade, getting rid of Mookie Betts in the offseason, because if you had Alex Verdugo come to the Red Sox and it was a normal 162-game season, he would miss time, yes, but he would still be able to go to the ballpark, get acquainted with his teammates. There'd be some camaraderie there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the times we're in right now, there's not a lot of camaraderie, and that's important in the game of baseball. You have the clubhouse atmosphere and all that. Players can't communicate with each other. They can't get to the ballpark earlier as they would have liked, especially J.D. Martinez. We'll talk about him in just a second. But you have a new manager with Ron Renneke. You have a GM or president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom, who basically got thrown into the spinning wheel of suck that the Red Sox are in 2020. And altogether, I'm glad this is a 60-game season, because if I have to watch 102 more of these games, I might throw my head against a brick wall.
Yeah, I mean, there's even, I think it was a quote from Andrew Benintendi at one point. I think it was last week. He said that he had teammates that he hadn't spoken to yet, which I guess is great for social distancing. But I mean, text each other or something. Like, what is going on? Like, I get that they want to keep these guys apart for the virus, especially the baseball players, because they don't seem to care about the virus at all. But not talking to your teammates, that's an issue. I feel like Benintendi, like in a normal season, JD Martinez would probably have Benintendi watching so much film of himself to get his, because Benintendi, I don't know what's going on with him. If I see him strike out swinging down on his knee one more time, he's going to be the new Manny Machado, because that's what that looks like to me. It drives me insane to watch him at bat.
You want a microcosm of the season? Red Sox manager Ron Renneke, when asked about finding someone to start instead of Ryan Weber, quote, "Who do we have that's better than Ryan Weber?" That's the 2020 season in a microcosm.
Ron Renneke is not a head coach or a manager. He's just not. And especially because the problem with what's going on with the Red Sox, I think, is that Chaim Bloom is running this team, and he's a by-the-numbers guy. He's your stats dork. He's the GM that Theo Epstein made popular in the early 2000s. Ron Renneke is your standard baseball guy, right? These two guys are not, I don't think they're talking to each other. They're really not. I even saw a quote from Ron Renneke that says he's not looking at the stats when he's setting the lineup. What?
That's what you want to hear. This is Bobby V 2.0. Good job.
It really
Ron
is.
Renneke.
And so a lot of people are like, oh, Alex Cora is coming back in 2021. I don't know if that's true. I don't even know if I really hope that that's true. But it's got to be not Ron Renneke. They got to hire someone for sure. Chaim Bloom's got to get his own guy in there, because the only way this team can be successful and build itself back up to where it was in 2018 is if the GM and the manager are actually talking to each other and listening to each other.
All right, so let's put into kind of context here, numbers-wise, what we're talking about with these players. This is as of August 6th. J.D. Martinez batting .244 with 3 RBIs, no home runs yet. Rafael Devers batting .200 with a home run and 2 RBI. And Andrew Benintendi, 1 RBI, 0 home runs, and an .063 batting average. So that is your 2020 Red Sox. Now, there is one member of the Red Sox that at the start of the season we thought was going to have a big positive impact on the team, and that is Eduardo Rodriguez. As everybody knows, he did test positive for COVID-19, and he has, or I should say, he's been shut down for the rest of the season because his heart muscle had actually grown, which is very dangerous if you go out there and try and play through that. So Erod and his 19-6 record from 2019 will not be playing here in 2020. And much like players opting out for COVID-19 altogether, I can't fault him for really trying to fight the issue.
I think that I obviously I don't know how he contracted this virus, because it could have been he was stupid and went out and did something he shouldn't be doing, but it also could just be someone he trusted brought it to him, and we don't really know. Like the circumstances are not there. However, I think the fact that Erod and the Red Sox have been blatant about what's going on with him is going to be good for the MLB, because Eduardo Rodriguez is an athletic young guy. We all keep saying that, if you're in good shape and you're young, you're not going to see any of these symptoms. He saw these symptoms and he got hit hard. And not only that, but now he has a life-altering disease that doctors are saying there's no cure for.
Now, they're still going to go through different tests and prescriptions, so he should be good for the 2021 season.
I'm sure he'll be healthy again, but what I'm saying is if these MLB guys say that this virus is not a joke because it's could screw with the rest of Eduardo Rodriguez's career, maybe they'll pay attention more to these guidelines that the MLB and the World Health Organization has been setting for everyone.
And look at Rudy Gobert. When he initially tested positive, everyone kind of treated him as a blackball patient. They didn't want to be anywhere near him.
Right.
And, a month or so after, he ended up being basically the poster child voice for COVID-19.
Right.
And getting the word out there.
Yeah.
From a gameplay on the field strictly standpoint, maybe it's best that Eduardo Rodriguez isn't on the field because, he'd be a bright spot on an otherwise abysmal team, and you basically have the Tampa Bay Rays 2.0.
Right.
So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world from a gameplay on the field standpoint that Erod isn't out there.
I feel like at this point, and I'm not just saying this because the team that I happen to root for is terrible. This season is terrible anyways. If they somehow by a miracle get to a World Series, I wouldn't put an asterisk next to whoever wins, but I also probably wouldn't think about them when I'm thinking about world champion teams. This season has been an absolute nightmare, and it's going to be one of those things that in 20 years we're going to be at like barroom trivia and talking about this. This is the season that we're going to be asked about.
20 years, we will probably still be here, probably doing out of bounds.
That's
out of bounds 30. On that note, thanks for watching this edition of the program. A reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at OOB New England, as we will keep you updated on all the sports that have returned, including the Boston Red Sox, also the Boston Bruins, Boston Celtics, and eventually the New England Patriots whenever they get on the field. So thanks for watching this edition of the program. I'm John Luck. She's Mary Evers. We'll see you later.